No classes today in California's largest public school district because of a threat sent by email. I'm Amitha Sharma, the latest on the investigation and reaction from San Diego school leaders tonight on KPBS Evening Edition. Also tonight, solar companies are claiming victory as state officials recommend a plan for net metering. Could it save the solar industry? Plus, could there be new answers for the long-standing stink out at La Jolla Cove? KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. California's largest school district canceled classes at all its schools today because of a threat emailed to a Los Angeles Unified School Board member. The shutdown affected more than 1,000 schools throughout LA. New York schools say they got the same threat and determined it was a hoax. But officials in LA say they didn't want to take any chances.
The school district safeguards 750,000 lives every day. When they make a decision, they have to take into account the safety of the children of Los Angeles.
The email is still under investigation. Police say it was routed through Germany, but they believe it came from a lot closer. San Diego schools stuck to their usual class schedule, but KPBS education reporter Matt Bowler says they were on high alert. He joins us now from the newsroom.
San Diego schools were open and no districts in the county reported being threatened like LA Unified was. Music Watson from the San Diego County Office of Education says each and every threat is examined.
The school folks look at it carefully, and then if it's something that they think rises to a higher level, then they work with law enforcement.
Watson also says schools take an abundance of caution when thinking about closing a campus.
Generally speaking, schools try to strike a balance. You want to make sure that students are safe. You want to keep classes going. You want to educate kids. You don't want to close schools just for the sake of closing schools. But nobody wants to be wrong either and not close schools and have something happen.
Watson says now the potential for threats in San Diego County has an added dimension.
Sometimes what we see is copycat threats. So something like this happens, especially getting close to the winter break, and we want to make sure that we don't have people who think that maybe they want to start their holiday vacation a little bit early.
Regardless, Watson says if anyone sees anything suspicious or threatening, to report it to police, because you never know. Matt Bowler, KPBS News.
A threat also shut down San Bernardino Valley College today. The school serves about 12,000 students, and it's in the middle of finals. It's a few miles from the site of the deadly shootings nearly 2 weeks ago. Investigators aren't revealing details of the threat. Classes will be back in session tomorrow. Should a video showing a San Diego police officer fatally shooting an unarmed man be publicly released? That was the topic of discussion inside a federal courthouse today. KPBS reporter David Wagner was there and brings us these details.
The video in question shows Officer Neil Browder fatally shooting a man in the Midway district earlier this year. He was responding to a call of a man with a knife. It turned out he had no weapon. The video is currently under a protective order that prevents it from being publicly released. KPBS and other news organizations are suing to have the video made public. Attorneys for the officer involved and the city argued that releasing the video could taint an internal investigation within the police department and prejudice any potential jury pool. On the other side, attorneys argued that the public has a right to know how this shooting occurred, and they cited a recent case in Chicago where video was released. I spoke with the attorney representing the media, Guylan Cummins, outside the courthouse.
We think it's, the camera is one neutral view of what happened that night and that the public's entitled to see it.
Judge William Hayes concluded the hearing, saying he'd issue a written decision later this week. David Wagner, KPBS News.
Qualcomm will remain intact for now. The chip maker had been under pressure from a major shareholder to split in July, following decisions to cut spending and slash its workforce by 15%. But the San Diego Fortune 500 company says a review of its operations showed that Qualcomm is best served by its current corporate and financial structure. The company's investors appeared to like the news. Its shares went up almost 3% today. State regulators are proposing rules that allow rooftop solar owners to continue selling electricity back to power companies. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson has details.
The solar industry says California utility regulators have handed them a major victory. The California Public Utilities Commission issued a proposed ruling today that allows rooftop solar owners to continue to sell excess electricity back to power companies. It's something called net metering, and it will continue past January. Brad Havener works for the California Solar Energy Industries Association. He says regulators rejected utility-backed efforts to make solar financially unattractive.
This proposed decision clearly is a rejection of the utility claims of enormous subsidy amounts from non-solar customers to solar customers. Those numbers aren't real, and the proposed decision rejects them.
Utilities have argued that non-solar customers are subsidizing their solar neighbors, and they were hoping for additional fees and an end to the net metering subsidy. Amber Albrecht works for San Diego Gas and Electric. She says the ruling is a disappointment.
We're going to continue to engage with the CPUC and hopefully finding a better solution than what's in today's proposed decision that helps to limit the potential burden on non-solar customers.
Solar customers will have to pay some additional charges, but solar backers say the changes do not make solar installations prohibitively expensive. The full commission still has to vote on the measure before it's adopted. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
San Diego now has a legal commitment to cut its greenhouse gases in half in 20 years. The City Council unanimously passed a climate action plan that will boost the number of people who walk, bike, or take transit to work, so that by 2035, only half of San Diegans will drive to work. The plan also commits the city to using only renewable energy. Mayor Kevin Faulkner says the plan is the first step to changing the city for the better.
Approving this plan today creates a map for charting San Diego's future by striking the right balance between protecting our environment, which we hold so precious, and growing our economy. San Diego can support clean technology, renewable energy, and economic growth.
City staff will come back to the council in April with a budget and blueprint for how to put the plan into action. For the fifth straight year, San Diego State University received a record number of applications for admission. More than 80,000 freshmen and undergraduate transfer students applied this fall. That's a 3% increase over last year. Cal State San Marcos is also reporting a record number of applications. Today, San Diego County supervisors added their name to a growing list of local officials who want the FAA to make changes to the proposed takeoff patterns for Lindbergh Field. KPBS's Steve Walsh has the story.
Under the proposed SoCal Metroplex, the Federal Aviation Administration plans to adjust the flight paths for airports around Southern California. Starting in October, a group of residents on Point Loma have raised objections.
There is no doubt as to the importance of the airport to our region and to our local economy. But we also need to take into consideration its impact on our local residents.
Point Loma residents want to keep a 1998 agreement that requires planes to stay away from land as they turn to fly east after takeoff. Cox says he met with the FAA Friday and representatives from the City Council, the Mayor's office, and Congressman Peters, as well as residents.
We're really proud of the fact that our political leadership has stepped up and are backing our concerns so significantly.
Next stop, the San Diego County Regional Airport Authority will take up the issue at its meeting Thursday. Ultimately, the FAA will decide. Their decision is expected in March. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
Southern California researchers have teamed up with civil protection officials in Tijuana to prepare residents in flood-prone areas for coming rains from El Nino. KPBS Fronteras reporter Jean Guerrero has the story.
Los Laureles Canyon is directly south of the U.S.-Mexico border. When it rains, houses can come crumbling down and the roads can become impassable. Floods carry trash and sediment from the canyon into the U.S., which is at a lower elevation. Researchers from UC Irvine and a local environmental group are advising Los Laureles residents on how to deal with possible floods from El Niño rains.
It's better to work at the origin of the problem than to waste human and material resources only on mitigating the effects on the U.S. side.
The meetings are part of a UC Irvine project called Flood Rise, which aims to lessen the damage from coastal flooding in Southern California. Residents were shown videos of damage from previous rains. They were advised to reinforce their roofs and not to throw trash in ditches, which can block the flow of water and increase the risk of flood. Residents said they learned a lot from the session.
To unite with your neighbors to help and not throw trash, and if you see someone else throwing it, pick it up yourself.
Residents were also told to keep an emergency backpack filled with canned foods, a flashlight, and more. Floods in the 1990s left thousands of Tijuana residents homeless. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
Something smells rotten in the village of La Jolla. Stench from accumulated bird and sea mammal droppings has built up there for years. But as KPBS's Claire Trageser reports, there are new possible solutions to this stinky problem.
Bruce Just is visiting from Omaha, Nebraska, and decided to spend the morning at La Jolla Cove. When he arrived, he was greeted with more than just a view of sparkling ocean water below.
The second I stepped out of the door of the car, I says, wow, that's a pungent smell.
As most locals know, the smell is sea lion and bird poop that's built up on the bluffs. But Just was unaware of what was behind the problem until I told him.
Sea lions, really? Well, I'd like to see a sea lion while I'm here.
That shouldn't be a problem. Dozens can usually be found at the water's edge. Residents say the smell started when a fence was put up nearby. That meant birds and sea lions could congregate on the beach without being disturbed. 3 years ago, then Mayor Bob Filner stepped in to fix the problem.
It's going to be a great day in the history of La Jolla that will go down in history for generations. You've heard of Independence Day? Well, this is End of Poop Day for our community, right? Thank you, Blue Eagle.
But it wasn't that simple. Government regulations say cleaning the rocks can't create runoff that goes into the ocean. That means the city can't power wash the bluffs, spray cleaners on them, or scrape the poop into the water. Instead, the city hired the company Blue Eagle to spray a special bacteria that eats poop without creating any runoff into the ocean. Animal waste is naturally decomposed by bacteria, but that's what causes the smell. So says Blue Eagle's president, Robert Ahern.
Any kind of waste, let's call it bird guano, let's even pick on La Jolla, eventually there will be enough bacteria that accumulate to remediate that guano. The problem is it's going to be a very stinky process.
That's because a lot of bacteria create smelly gas as they eat.
What we have done is selected those bacteria that do not off-gas odors, but off-gas only carbon dioxide.
Carbon dioxide doesn't smell, so problem solved, right? Not exactly. Norm Blumenthal is a lawyer representing business groups that are suing the city over the smell. They say the bacteria isn't sprayed often enough to take care of the problem.
The ideal solution is spray as often as possible so there's no smell.
But so far, that hasn't happened. In October, Mayor Kevin Faulconer boosted the spraying to 3 times a month, or about every 8 days. But the spray only fixes the smell for 5 to 7 days.
If he can just increase it and take away the smell, I'd be the first person to dismiss our case.
So that's not a long-term solution. It's a kind of a short-term situation.
La Jolla resident and city council candidate Ray Ellis has been working with a group to solve the stench. They've come up with some creative ideas.
We've talked about sea lions do not like to be wet when they're out of the water. So we've talked about a misting system that may keep it damp and somewhat uncomfortable for them, so they move to another area.
Another idea comes from the piers in San Francisco.
A line which has PVC pipe on it, so when the sea lions try to haul out, that pipe will spin on a cable and prevents them from hauling out into this particular area.
Ellis says no matter what solution the city chooses, it needs to fix the problem.
When you boil it all down, though, it really is a quality of life issue. I mean, this is such a great area, and for the people who live and work here, it's a big deal.
The lawyer Blumenthal takes it a step further, saying the city is legally required to clean up the poop.
The city has a duty to remove the cause of the odor from the rocks.
He will continue his lawsuit until the air over La Jolla is as clear as the view.
The slogan is, go to La Jolla, the most beautiful place in the world that stinks. So that's not a very good logo. So we want to eliminate the last part of that logo.
Claire Tregeser, KPBS News.
KPBS video journalist Nick McVicker helped produce that story. The countdown for California's biking event of the year has begun. Organizers of the annual Amgen Tour of California drove all around San Diego today to film a promo video for the race. The tour will kick off from San Diego next May with some of the world's best athletes. Spokesperson Raina Kennedy says the excitement is so contagious, San Diegans will be hooked on cycling.
And that speed just going by you. I mean, it's enough to drive, somebody off their couch, away from their TV, and onto the street to see something like this.
The crew finished up their day of filming in Imperial Beach with Mayor Serge Dedina. Grab a jacket. It's feeling brisk in San Diego. Some areas may be waking up with temperatures in the 30s tomorrow. Molly Cochran has more on another system that may have showers in the forecast in tonight's KPBS weather report.
Well, quiet conditions setting up across California, at least for now, and our satellite and radar actually reflecting that. So we can see things are relatively quiet from LA into San Diego. As we take a look at San Diego County, tonight's going to be very dry, but we also have some cooler conditions filtering on in. So we want to make sure we have those coats as we head out the door, because temperatures will be below average for this time of year for many. So clear skies expected for the remainder of tonight. Here's a look at our winds. Generally pretty light and calm along the immediate coast, with some higher wind speeds across the mountainous areas. So that's going to help us feel even cooler out there. So temperatures going to expect to be in the 40s, the 30s for Alpine as we wake up early Wednesday morning. Factoring in that winds, it could feel even cooler than that. We do have a frost advisory in effect across the immediate, or the mountainous areas rather. The immediate coastline going to stay a little bit warmer, 50 expected to wake up to in San Diego. Now, by the time we head into Wednesday afternoon, temperatures getting back into the lower 60s. That's right where we should be for this time of year. Ramona at 52 in Mount Laguna will stay pretty cool with temperatures in the upper 40s. And those temperatures going to decline as we head into the overnight hours, waking up on Thursday morning. If you're headed back to work, again, the moral of the story, want to make sure you have those jackets ready to go, because it's going to be quite a cool next couple days compared to where we should be for this time of year. Also, by late Friday night, temperatures in the mid-50s for San Diego. Will be at 43 in Mount Laguna, and in Ramona right around 47 degrees. Tonight, we're going to be shivering in Oceanside. Temperature below the freezing mark, good enough to add in that hat and that scarf. Now, this time of year in San Diego, we should be coming in right around 48 degrees. So we're about 5 below for tonight, average-wise, 31 in Alpine. We're in the teens in Mount Laguna, so make sure you bundle up. We will have clear conditions across much of the region. Looking good to go for the middle to later half of the week. Thursday and Friday along the immediate coastline, mostly sunny skies, temperatures in the mid-60s for Thursday, getting into the 70s by Friday, so that's going to be feeling pretty good. Now, we do have the next system going to be arriving into the Pac Northwest Thursday night. That's going to be digging to the south by the time we head into the weekend. So by Saturday night, we could be looking at a few passing showers and an increase in cloud cover. Inland also looking good Thursday into Friday as far as the sunshine's concerned. Will be also dry for the start of the weekend. Mountainous regions going to be quiet as we head into the later half of the week, and that does include the desert regions as well. Back to you.
I'm Gwen Eiffel on the next News Hour, the limits of renewable energy and what it'll take to create a long-lasting alternative to fossil fuels. That's Tuesday on the PBS News Hour.
Algae is one of the most diverse, adaptable, and ubiquitous life forms on the planet. More than just pond scum, it's a source of food and increasingly fuel. And at one algae farm, researchers are employing these tiny green plants to trace the origins of sex. Reporter Jim Kircher says we might call this story 50 Shades of Green.
When you come to see Jim Human's farm, you will not find him tending acres of crops. Instead, he brings you to a set of cabinets, albeit high-tech, expensive cabinets, with computers controlling the variables of light, heat, and atmosphere.
This is one of our 12 growth chambers.
This is Dr. Jim Human's experimental algae farm at the Danforth Plant Science Center in St. Louis.
It's a pretty unexplored area.
It was early in his career that he was drawn to unlocking the secrets of these tiny plants.
But I saw that there's some interesting problems in biology that you could only approach using green algae. And I felt that green algae were really understudied and underexploited. These guys are so beautiful.
While most of us know algae from bodies of water, from puddles to oceans, it's really long dead algae, not dinosaurs, that's been fueling our cars. Algae contain lipids, oil, and that's why some say it is the biofuel of the future, although they've been saying that for quite some time. Still, there are practical and potentially profitable reasons for working with algae.
We can have at least 12 different experiments going on at the same time.
But in the process of trying to determine which algae work best under what conditions, Human's research team found something that's created quite a buzz around one of the most intriguing questions about life on Earth.
How sex has evolved. This is a very broad evolutionary question.
It's the birds and the bees, plants and animals and people. It's all around us, the workings of males and females. And it's been going on for maybe 1 billion years. So you don't find the answer to this evolution question by digging up bones.
Because we became multicellular and plants became multicellular so very long ago. It happens to be that the group of algae that we're working with evolved multicellularity very recently in evolutionary time.
You can see the evolutionary steps in different kinds of living related algae. Single cells that just split into two, a step up the ladder, algae with plus and minus mating types that merge and share genetic material, and multicellular algae with fully developed sexes, females producing eggs, males producing sperm.
That looks like a female strain, that's a male strain.
Human says it was assumed that key evolutionary step must have involved a lot of genes working in a lot of complex ways. But when they followed the sex trail, it led them to just one single gene.
And that one gene which determines mating type in the single-cell alga, where you can't tell the difference between, we call them plus and minus, that same gene controls being male or female in the multicellular alga. So we can literally trace a genetic through this one gene.
This is sort of the origins of sex.
Right, exactly, the origins of sex.
And you can do a sex change operation on algae, is that correct?
We can, actually. We can take a genetically female alga, put a single gene in from the male, and now we have a modified alga that makes sperm that are actually functional. And we can take that same gene away from the male, and now he'll start making eggs. Actually, these are girls.
Now, this is great science on its own, but it does contribute to the work he's doing at the Danforth Center's Enterprise Institute for Renewable Fuels. Algae is still a potential fuel of the future. There are challenges in moving from demonstration projects to large-scale farms, perfecting the technology and making it economically viable in the marketplace. Jim Human's work will continue to focus on the inner workings of the algae itself. His contribution to the understanding of the evolution of sex takes us back hundreds of millions of years. His real job is figuring out how he can put that knowledge to work.
How can we turn them into a crop by developing breeding systems for them? How can we figure out what are the important genes that we might want to modify in algae in order to improve them as a biofuel feedstock? It took, 9,000 years to domesticate maize, and we want to do the same thing for algae in, a dozen years or less.
You can see more stories like this on SciTech Tech Now, Sundays at 5:30 p.m. here on KPBS. Here's a look at what's coming up tomorrow on KPBS Radio. The Republican presidential candidates are facing off in Las Vegas tonight for their last debate of the year. Tune in to Morning Edition tomorrow for a full recap and analysis. And on Midday Edition, the box office debut hitting close to home for football fans in San Diego. A doctor offers insight on the new Will Smith film, Concussion. That's tomorrow on KPBS Radio. Recapping tonight's top stories, police are investigating an emailed threat that prompted the decision to close schools to nearly 700,000 students in Los Angeles today. The school board member got an email warning of an attack like the recent deadly shooting in nearby San Bernardino. Investigators say the threat may turn out to be a hoax. Also, new developments on the video showing an officer-involved shooting that killed a man in the Midway district earlier this year. Attorneys for the officer involved and for the city debated the release of the video to the public today. The judge overseeing the case says he will issue a written decision later this week. You can find more news anytime on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. Have a great evening.